Hi, my name's Phil. I like to talk about politics. In this video, I'd like to discuss the final week of Brexit negotiations. There have been so many deadlines that I understand it's hard to take any of them seriously anymore. However, we are now facing something that's not a politically set deadline, not a, well, we need this by this so that we can do this. This is a real one because it takes time for the various parts of the EU to ratify an agreement if we're going to get it in time for the end of the transition period. You know, because they're democratic and they have lots of people who get a say in the matter, which is hard for Brexit supporters to understand. I get that. And we are now a week away from that real deadline. So if Boris Johnson doesn't agree to meet the EU's remaining demands within the next week, there will be no deal for the end of the year. It doesn't mean no deal, doesn't mean never, but it cannot have a seamless implementation with the end of the transition period. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So I've said quite a lot recently that I don't know what sort of deal the hardline Brexiteers in the ERG wing of the Conservative Party would accept. Some, of course, it's very clear, wants no deal at all. And they also want us to go further and to tear up the withdrawal agreement that they themselves said was a great deal and that they themselves campaigned for. We know that because they've been public about that view. But that is only so many of them. Most of them seem to have kept their cards close to their chest, at least in public. I'm quite sure they're telling Boris Johnson exactly what they intend. But one thing I am absolutely certain of is they do not want the customs border inside the UK, which is currently where it has to be. From their point of view, if it has to be anywhere, let the EU put it inside Ireland, and to hell with the peace process, we'll just blame them for it. Now, in pursuing this path, Johnson was already going to be on the road to ruin, with or without Trump. Made no difference because both American parties defend the Good Friday Agreement, albeit the Democrats more vocally. But with Biden as president soon, Johnson's only Brexit ally in the world has been replaced not just by someone who isn't a Brexit ally, but is a paragon of anti-Brexit sentiment. Even EU leaders are diplomatic about Brexit. Well, you know, it's your decision, we don't agree with it, but it's your decision. You know, the path you take is your choice, you know. Biden's response was much more along the lines of, are you mental? Are you stark raving mad? What do you think you're doing? So what is Johnson to do? It's obvious that the Conservative government, I'm going to make a distinction here, the Conservative government is now going to have to align itself with the EU in a way that was not promised all year. For all their tough talking, you cannot simply try and remain a strong economy without agreements with 3/4 of your total trade amongst half of the world's economy. Frankly, doing without deals with even the half of our trade that we had with the EU was not realistic. But now reality is going to hit Brexit very hard in the face. But the political calculation for Boris Johnson is a little bit more subtle than that, and that is worrying, because we need to consider the following. So the hardline Brexiteers in the Conservative Party are now completely out of alignment with both the EU and the US. There is no compromising path possible. We have to move one way or the other. Do what the Brexiteers want, and we face international isolation, and an already knackered economy will be squashed to a pulp. We cannot allow any part of Ireland to suffer badly from Brexit, which is self-inflicted, and expect to have either the EU or the US on our side. Johnson has to choose between the US and the EU, with whom we have international relations, with whom we have international trade, security arrangements, all the rest of it, or the ERG. Now, the choice should be simple. And indeed, it will be for the Conservatives in time. But for Boris Johnson right now, this week, it isn't. Because let's go through the reality here. The ERG will not be ignored. You know, it's not a case of Boris Johnson saying to them, no, we can't do what you want, and them going, oh, bugger, those pesky kids. That's not going to happen. If Johnson takes them on, they will trigger the almost immediate downfall of his leadership. They are completely uncompromising and they care not a fig for the Conservative Party. This is the reason why Theresa May kept appeasing them. She knew that the moderates would act to keep the impression of party unity. So in other words, if she had to choose one way or the other, the moderates would sort of toe the party line. They'd have their arguments with her behind closed doors. The ERG would not. They would go crazy. So she kept making concessions to them to keep them on board. But they're like hostage takers who just demand more and more and more. You give them into a demand, they go, oh, that was easy, we'll demand more of you now. They'll never stop. They'll never be satisfied. To oppose them is to trigger a showdown that Boris Johnson cannot hope to win. Maybe he'd have a chance were he willing to sideline them. So if he were to marshal more moderate voices in the party, and there's far fewer of those now compared to the last parliament, but they do still exist. If he were to marshal them and work with the opposition, he could ignore the ERG, but he will not do that. Now, you could say that if he goes along with the ERG, that he can't work closely with the US or the EU and we'll get a chaotic Brexit this January. So it's like ridiculous. But you also have to consider this. So let's take Joe Biden. He has a deep disdain for Boris Johnson. He's been quite vocal. He's publicly compared him to Trump. He said he uses the Trump playbook, and Trump is absolutely Biden's antithesis. In addition, Boris Johnson racially insulted Obama back in 2016. Biden hasn't forgotten this. It might be easy to suppose that, you know, Biden was Obama's vice president. It was a political marriage of convenience. No, Biden's genuinely very close to Obama. He took it very personally, as you would. Boris has no chance of anything other than a diplomatically polite but frosty relationship with Biden's America. Nothing Johnson can do or is prepared to do will build bridges there. Similarly, Johnson can't work closely with the EU either, because he's built his power base on the notion of opposing the EU as if the EU are an enemy. He's been extremely rude to them. And although there are too many personalities in the EU to be personally offended by this, they're very pragmatic. A change in tune would see Johnson's support melt away. Besides, Nigel Farage, the guy that Graham Hughes calls the foghorn of ignorance, amongst other things that are not really repeatable, has lost his meal ticket in America and will be coming back over here now to keep pressure up on the Brexit rhetoric. Now, if Johnson has any ambition to be the Prime Minister who fights the next general election, then I would say he'd have a right political battle on his hands right now. Just as I say now that the Conservatives do, I would say Boris Johnson, in order to get himself through this into 2024, has got a right fight on his hands. Because after spending years kicking the Brexit can down the road, he now has to pick a side. And either decision leads to political war. But Johnson is on his way out. He's useless. He keeps humiliating his MPs with U-turns. He hasn't delivered the Brexit that he promised because it's impossible. He isn't delivering the levelling up of the north of England, where there's now quite a lot of Conservative MPs. He's killing quite a lot of party supporters with COVID, and now he's burned the only bridge to America. Didn't even abandon Trump when it was obvious he was losing. Not even this weekend, when Biden has been nominated president-elect, I saw Dominic Raab, the Foreign Secretary, still squirming about distancing himself away from Trump's comments. Still won't even do that. Can't even bring themselves to distance themselves from Trump now that he's a lame duck president. And, you know, he offered up a weak and very late message of congratulations to Biden on the news of his formal elevation to president-elect that basically tells us Johnson knows he's buggered. It was a piss-poor, half-arsed attempt at a congratulations. He knows there's no point in trying to kiss Biden's arse. It ain't going to work. Biden himself showed us why, if we're in any doubt whatsoever. So a BBC correspondent asked the president-elect for a word for the BBC, sir. The BBC, Biden asked. I'm Irish, he said. This wasn't him trying to be rude or divisive. He was sending a message. I'm going to stand by Ireland through Brexit, he was saying. Sticking by Ireland here. So I really don't know what's going to happen this week, genuinely. A government worried about the next 4 years would be forced to kick ERG in the nuts and run away to the EU. They would not only agree to the only deal on offer now, because that's not even enough. That does not stop chaos in Ireland. They'd also have to ask for an implementation period that works exactly like an extension to the transition period, but with a different name so you can sell it back home. We'd avoid the border chaos because we'd still be in the customs union following all the EU rules, all the rest of it. The ERG would be furious, of course. But the problem is that Johnson is not thinking about the next few years, but the next few days. If he pisses off the EU and the US, he has a problem, a big problem later on. If he pisses off the ERG, he has a problem tomorrow. His modus operandum of doing anything is always to do whatever is necessary to get him through one more day and worry about the consequences later. Just get himself home to his bottle of wine and that's it. And then we'll worry about tomorrow. And that has me thinking that he could still, as mad as it would seem, refuse the deal anyway and worry about the aftermath later. But there are other pressures on him as well, so we'll see. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.